Good morning, everybody. Saturday morning. Woohoo, and not a work day. I'm in the process of cleaning this out. I think that's a hay feeder of some kind that was left. I'm not sure. This was full of just junk. Those are the fluorescent light bulbs I pulled out. I need to get those to the dump. I've got a dump run planned, as you can tell. I got a bunch of stuff that's going to the dump. But I'm moving all my grain from in the office out to here. I want it someplace where I can lock the bolt just in case a horse gets loose. Ooh, there's a leak somewhere or something. This is wet. Yep, there it is. Oh, I need to seal the roof. It's a metal roof, so it's got like where the bolts, the nuts were. It leaks occasionally when it's been raining for days and days. So I need to fix that. But anyways, this is where I'm going to put all the grain and stuff, because it makes my office really dusty, and I want to be able to use this for, you know, all sorts of stuff. They suggested I put my milk stands out here, but I don't want to, I'm not milking in 20 below. So this is how noisy it is in the morning. That's how dark it is. That's how dark this was until I got those Patriot LED lighting, which was really nice. It was a great bonus. So here's the office. But if you've been watching my videos, you've seen all this anyway. So I'm going to do a quick video about dairy goats. So I started on the 1st. Today I think is the 5th or the 6th. I started drinking my raw dairy goat milk in my coffee in the morning. I don't normally drink like milk just to drink a glass of milk. Very rarely do I crave it. But I've already felt a difference in my body. The stiffness from my joints they're not as stiff as they used to be. I used to be pretty stiff. So I did some research and I found a doctor, a holistic doctor on the East Coast. That's for after I get one teat done. This is the one teat, so she eats that much grain. I have her bananas here. I try to get everything ready before I bring her in. And anyway, this doctor was explaining the benefits of goat milk and how it's so much better for you, and how there's less. It's a A2 instead of A1, or A1 instead of A2. It's naturally homogenized. It's got all, because I was thinking about it. I'm like, so cows, when you do the research into dairy cows, they tell you that dairy cows eat twice as much as like beef cattle. And they need a lot more grass or hay. And I've been watching Justin Rhodes, and he's doing this homestead challenge where he's clearing pasture for his cows and his sheep. And taking what I know from gardening and earth, or soil, not dirt, soil structures, the purpose of minerals. And I've talked about how like dandelions have those deep tap-rooted weeds, so-called labeled weeds, that their taproot goes down and they pull up all of the missing nutrients up into their leaves and their flowers, and then they spread their seed. But then when their leaves die in the fall, it ferments, it decomposes, it goes back into the soil, and all those minerals they pulled up and were storing in their leaves are now at the top of the soil. So it's able to get broken down and put it back into the top layers of the soil. So, I mean, think about it. If you have one of those golf course lawns, you are constantly putting stuff on it. But what happens is when it rains, obviously it washes it down to the lower levels, and you don't have any taprooted things in your yard to pull it back up. Leaves are a great source of decomposition. Leaves and wood chips. You can do all sorts of searches on Google it, or I don't do Google as much as I use Go.go or some of the other ones, just because I don't feel like supporting Google because, well, I don't like the way they do their business. But that's a rant for later. But when you do all the research and you realize how the mineral process is and how your soil is, and then I started thinking about what dairy cows eat versus what dairy goats eat. And I've watched my goats go out, and they will pass up succulent young grass to eat all of the dandelion leaves and the flowers and the weeds and the deep tap-rooted so-called weeds. I'm not going to call them weeds anymore because I don't think they're weeds. I think they're perennial wildflowers, and that they're something that the environment needs. And I think when we try to get rid of a species, wherever their environment is, in the ocean, in the mountains, in the trees, whatever it is, that we lose our biodiversity. So thinking along those lines, you're going to have way more minerals in your goat milk than you're going to have in your cow milk, because they're not eating those perennial so-called weeds that are pulling all those nutrients up from deep, deep down inside the earth. So that's when I started to do some more research, because I was like, well, wait a minute, am I crazy here, or is this something that's true? Can I find it? Well, then I started listening to a doctor from the East Coast. She's a naturopath, but she's a doctor. She has her degree in she's a doctor. She didn't just get an online degree. She's summa cum laude. So I was listening to her research, and she's talking about the benefits that are just amazing. There's stuff in it that gets rid of over amount of yeast in your system, overabundance of acne, and overabundance of Candida. I do believe that's the same as yeast. There's something in it which goats are super nimble. They climb up mountains and stuff. Well, there's something in there that lubricates their joints. So when you drink their milk, it lubricates your joints, which was surprising to me, because I had thought that maybe it would get rid of my allergies, because I think I have I'm lactose intolerant, and I love cheese and milk. I cannot give it up. Okay. I'd rather walk around blowing my nose every 10 seconds than give up my milk and my coffee and cheese. But I've noticed that, like this morning, I can normally blow my nose like, I don't know, 30 times in the morning to clear up the stuff from the night. This morning, I blew my nose twice. Twice. That's it. I didn't wake up with a sore throat. I was a little congested, but nowhere near like I normally am. I mean, but I feel better movement-wise. Like, I'm not as stiff when I get up off the couch as I used to be. And goat's milk has an anti-inflammatory property to it. It's got antibiotic, antifungal properties to it. But the problem is that the goat milk at the store tastes funny. And goat cheese I've never liked because it tastes funny. It's got that funny aftertaste to it that I just don't like. And so I found that me milking my goats, and I know they've said, well, you got to keep the buck and the girl far, far apart. Well, I really don't have mine that far apart. I've got, what are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, there's 14 stalls. So there's probably 10 stalls. So Artie the buck is on the left at the far end. And then the girls, the one that I was milking literally, that I've been milking until we weaned her last week, was literally across the aisle 2 stalls down. So they couldn't have been more than 40 feet apart at the most. And he's bucky because it's season and he's peeing all over his head. He's stinky. But he is definitely has not affected the milk. So I have been drinking raw milk. I know where my milk is from. I know how I keep my goat. I know how clean her stall is. I know what her udder looks like. I wash her udder. I wash my hands. I immediately cool the milk into a cup like I was just filling this bucket. I'll fill this bucket with cold water because it's well watered. It's cold. And then once I'm done milking, I'll drop my sealed quart jar in there, and it will float in there and cool it off immediately, because that was another thing I'd heard, that if you cool the milk quickly, there's less funky taste to it. Last night, I didn't cool right away because I thought we were running right into the house, and then we didn't. But I tasted that milk when I got home from the grocery store, and it tasted just like the milk I got the day before. But there's no aftertaste in my milk. None whatsoever. And because I'm so on top of what's going on, I am drinking it raw. That's a choice you have to make. I am not going to tell you to drink it raw. I'm not your doctor. I'm just telling you what I have been researching, what I have seen. I will link the doctor's video, then she talks about it in the notes, so you can make your own decision. I think that if you want to live long and you want to be healthy and productive and you want to live your life, is that you can no longer trust what you hear or see. So don't believe me. Go listen to the doctor, do the research on her, go Google other stuff, go find other aspects, point it. Don't just take my word for it, because I could be crazy. I could just be the fluke. My body is different than your body, which is different than everybody else's body. We all have our own individual body. We've got different genes, which is why DNA is used in a court of law. We're all different. So what works for one person might not work for you. And it might work better for the other person. You have to start not trusting what you hear. Be a critical thinker. Think for yourself. Do your own research. If it's that important to you, take 15, 20 minutes. You'd be surprised the amount of information you can just glean if you Google something for 15 minutes. And don't just use Google. Use DuckDuckGo. Use another one. Don't use anything that's brand new. So when I did the research on the COVID shot, I didn't do a research on COVID. I did a research on mRNA vaccines. And I did not look at any of the documentation that had been recently published because I was worried about how fast that was pushed out. So I did a lot of research, and I did a lot of research on Fauci, and I did a lot of research going back to AZT and AIDS from the 80s, which he was associated with. Do your research. Be a critical thinker, okay? Do not just swallow what someone is trying to sell you. A lot of the stuff out there is snake oil. It's no good for you. Here's my chicken. It's not good for you. It could be good for somebody else, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. But anyway, back to the dairy goats now that I got off on another tangent, because I really think we have lost our ability to be critical thinkers. I think being a critical thinker will save you a lot. And you know what? And so what? So what if you question somebody? Then you can go, hey, I looked into it. You're right. That's a really good idea. Oh, and there's Goose. Yeah. Or you can look into go, well, I don't know that that's going to work for me, so I'm going to try something else. Thomas is chasing the goose. You would think that turkeys and geese would get along better. They have enough room. Anyway, so back to the goats. I chose dairy goats over cows, mainly because I don't know crap about a cow. I know nothing about cows. And when I started researching, then I started looking at how much they cost to get a dairy cow. And I'm like, well, how am I going to breed a dairy cow? I don't want a bull. I don't know anything about a bull. They're really big. They're scary. They intimidate me. And then I started listening to the neighbor who has cows. He talks about how they kick in, how he's been kicked, and it almost broke his leg, and he was in a cast. And then they tore this. I'm like, you know what? I've got that with the horses. And I don't need another animal that can hurt me. I mean, seriously hurt me. Now, if you're into dairy cows, I'm all for you. But you know what? I can pull a baby goat. I can't pull a baby calf by myself. They're like 150, 200 pounds when they're born. Let's be serious. I'm not 15 years old or even 25 years old at the peak of my physical stamina. I don't have the energy for that. And you know what? When my goats get sick, yesterday I took Artie in, took him to the vet, threw him in the horse trailer, drove him down there. They put him in a kennel, sawed off the scourges. Is that what they're called? The breeders tried to disbud him, and it didn't work well, so he's got these funky horns. One was curling towards his face, so we had to have it removed. And I did not know how far back I could cut, so I wanted the vet to do it first and then talk me through it, and I would do it the next time. What I really would have liked would have, go somewhere, but with goats, here's the problem. With dairy goats, there's not as many vets or people that are knowledgeable about it. However, get a hold of your county extension. Find somebody who runs the goat project for the fairs and stuff. They are awesome people. They know everything. You can call them. I have a lady, I text her all the time. She was trying to tell me he's a pipe cutter. And if I was more comfortable, I would. But now I'm comfortable. Now I know the vet just used, like he said, pruner shears, the big clippers you use on small saplings. You just cut it off. And I'm like, oh my God, I never would have. But I didn't know. And I told him, I said, I didn't want to. I said, I would be traumatized if I had to cut off his horn and it started squirting blood out at me. I'd be sick for days. But anyway, that's why I primarily chose dairy goats. Now, they're easier to pasture. They can get out. There's more predators that can go after them. However, they'll eat everything in there. I mean, you can clear areas of trees and bramble and brush and shrubs, and they'll eat all that stuff. And they don't eat the stuff that's poisonous. They go out here, they eat the maple leaves. They don't eat the oak leaves, because they know they're not good for them. Unless you leave them in an area where there's nothing else to eat and you force them to poison themselves. And then that's just bad ownership, not the goat's fault. But anyway, I will link the video from the naturalist doctor. You can see what you want. But I wanted to give you an update on the dairy goats and why I took dairy goats over dairy cows. Plus, not to mention, Feed-wise, way less. Stall size-wise, way less. Poop, way less. I don't have to scoop the goat poop. I clean out their stalls. I throw it out with the wood chips and the shavings. I put it on my garden beds and my garden. I put it all over. Goat poop is like way less nasty than cow poop. You don't really step in it. They're little like, I don't know, they look like guinea pig poop almost. They're little roly balls all over, like deer poop. Way easier to take care of. They don't stink as bad unless you have a buck. They're bad. They're stinky. But just the upkeep and the maintenance for me was well worth it. I mean, I've thrown my goats in the car and taken them to the vet. I didn't take Artie because I didn't want him to stink up my car. But the babies, when she broke her leg, we picked her up, got in the car and took off with her and went down the road in the car. So, you know, I can't put a cow in my car. I couldn't put a cow in a dog crate in the back of my truck bed either. I got to hook up a trailer. I got to do all this extra stuff. I've seen people put them in the back of minivans. They're new baby goats or baby goats and stuff. So I went with goats. Besides, I like them. They're more like a dog. They follow you around. They have personalities. They are noisy. But cows are noisy too. So there's your video on why I picked dairy goats. I think that's all the reasons why. I'm sure I'll come up with more that I just love them. But, oh, maybe I could love a cow. I like those Highland cows. I could never eat one. And then what's the point of having one if I'm not going to get anything off of them? You know, everybody has a purpose on my farm. So you need to have a purpose. Even if it's the cat, you know, you're killing mice. The dog, they're keeping me company and you're barking at strangers. I mean, everybody has a purpose. Except for my geese. No, they have a purpose. They eat. They're going to go into the orchard in the spring. And their eggs are pretty good. They're huge. They're like the size of 3 eggs. So, again, it's the upkeep, though, that you're worried about. If you're worried about upkeep and you only have a lot of places you couldn't have a cow, you could have a goat. You could have a goat on a 1/4 acre. Easily. You'll have to supplement with grain. And I'm sure that your neighbors, when they trim off, like, the branches off their trees or stuff, they'll be more than happy to give it to you. They can eat grass clippings. A horse can't. But you can give grass clippings to goats. I'm just researching that on some of the things to feed them. Fallen leaves, as long as they're not oak or bad ones, they love the leaves. Banana peels, love bananas. Yeah, they'll eat just about, they eat a lot of stuff. No citrus, no onions. I know those two for sure. But they're friendly, they're personable. I'd go with goats. Don't tell Justin I said so. He thinks they're the devils. But you know what, Justin? You could certainly clear a lot more of that land if you had goats in there. I'm telling you. And goat milk, much better for you than cow's milk. You'd have to have a lot more goats, though, because you guys use a lot of milk. But he could. All right, guys. Chat later.